Hello everyone, so welcome to this lecture. So in this particular lecture and in the following lectures, we will be learning about permissioned blockchain frameworks, and in particular one very popular permissioned blockchain platform, which is Hyperledger Fabric, and we will also get a hands-on tutorial on that. So in this lecture, we will go through Hyperledger Foundation, under which there are various projects including Fabric, and we will have a brief introduction about Hyperledger Fabric in general, and then we will also see how we can install Fabric platform in our own system and get started using it. So the keywords for this lecture are Hyperledger, the foundation, as well as the Hyperledger Fabric project, and permission blockchain networks in general. So what is Hyperledger Foundation? So it is actually an open source community. So this is an umbrella organization, you can say, which hosts a lot of different permissioned blockchain frameworks. So this is a collection of different projects which are focused towards building enterprise grade blockchain deployments. So unlike permissionless blockchain platforms, which are for example Ethereum and Bitcoin, these permissioned blockchains are suitable for more enterprise use cases, where the number of participants are very closely collaborating with each other, and they form a consortium. So this Hyperledger Foundation is home to various DLT frameworks, including Fabric, Sawtooth, Indy, etc. So these different projects have their own goals. For example, Fabric is for building consortium blockchain networks. On the other hand, Indy is for identity management. So we will see that all these projects are catered towards enterprise grade and permissioned network scenarios. So why enterprise grade? So these particular use case scenarios include different companies or organizations which want to collaborate. Okay, and these organizations are forming a closed group where the members, the participant members, know each other. So therefore this is a closed group, and hence we use these permissioned blockchain platforms in these cases. So here the important point is that there is no these organizations don't fully trust each other, and there is no central trusted authority which can be used. So as a result, these DLT platforms provide a distributed shared ledger based on permission consensus protocols. So the Fabric Foundation, or so the Hyperledger Foundation projects include different varieties of projects. So there are a few examples here. Hyperledger Celo is a tooling to serve as operational dashboard for blockchains, whereas Hyperledger Explorer is a tooling to invoke and deploy or query blocks. So these are kind of side toolings which work on top of existing blockchain platforms. So suppose you have a Hyperledger Fabric network or a Hyperledger Burrow network or some other permissioned blockchain network, then if you want to monitor or if you want to invoke and query these blockchains, then you can use these tools to do so, and these tools are compatible with not one but more than one blockchain platforms. Apart from these tools, there is Hyperledger Fabric, Burrow and Indy. So these are actually distributed ledger platforms in themselves. So Fabric is catered toward enterprise blockchain networks, whereas Burrow has a specific design. So we studied that in Ethereum. Ethereum uses a virtual machine for executing smart contracts, which is called Ethereum virtual machines. So this Hyperledger Burrow project actually uses EVM, Ethereum virtual machines, to execute smart contracts, but it does so in a permission setting. So the Hyperledger Burrow project, actually the Hyperledger Burrow platform can actually configure a permission network and run a BFT consensus protocol between the different participants of the network, but it will support the execution of smart contracts that are meant to be executed in EVMs. And lastly, the Hyperledger Indy is a very specific DLT platform which is catered towards identity management. So this Hyperledger IND project supports the different identity management standards such as decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials and verifiable presentations. So let us learn more about Hyperledger Fabric, this particular project. So this is an open source enterprise grade permission DLT platform. So it provides you the tools and libraries and everything else to set up your own permissioned network, and this particular framework is modular in nature. So this is designed in such a way that you can actually plug in your own consensus protocol or your own membership service providing module, etc. So this is designed for developing blockchain based products, solutions and applications, and which can be used to write your own decentralized applications with your own decentralized smart contract logics. So smart contracts can be written in Hyperledger Fabric in general purpose languages such as Java, Go, Node.js, etc. So unlike in Ethereum, where you need a specific programming language called Solidity, or there are alternatives, but these are very specific to Ethereum. You need to know them to write smart contracts, which will be capable of executing in an EVM. But here in Fabric, you can write your smart contracts in any general purpose programming languages such as Java, Go, Node.js. Okay. So that is a very nice advantage of using Fabric. So we will see that how you can actually get started using Hyperledger Fabric. So we will go through the installation steps here, and all the steps that we will show here are for specifically the Ubuntu Linux platform, but you can go through the documentation pages to find out how you can install it for other platforms like Windows or Mac OS. So to actually install Fabric, you need some prerequisites. You need to install these prerequisites. These are Git for version control, and then curl, which is an HTTP client, then Docker, Go and Docker Compose. So you need to install all of these to then install Hyperledger Fabric. So Docker is a very specific container technology which is used by Hyperledger Fabric to manage its different components and modules. So Docker actually uses this encapsulation technique called containers and then Fabric uses this Docker to separate out all the different processes which are being run by different organizations. So you can use Fabric to bring up an entire network of different organizations in a single system. So in your own PC or laptop, you can use Fabric and test it out. So that is supported by Docker. So the different organizations will be running their different processes in separate containers, thus making them actually isolated to each other. So these are the specific commands which you will be using to install Git and then curl, and then you will be also needing this Go programming language. So actually you can write Fabric smart contracts in different languages like Go, Node.js or Java, but in this particular tutorials, in these tutorials and the following lectures, we will be using this Go programming language to write smart contracts. So you have to install Go to follow this. So let us do this step by step and see how we can install these prerequisites. So first we will be installing using sudo apt install git. So this will install Git, which is a version control system. So using git ---- version, you can ensure that you have installed the proper version of Git required. Next we will be installing using sudo apt install the tool which is curl. This is an HTTP client. Similar to the Git, you can just use curl space ---- version to check that you have the proper version of curl installed. So after git and curl, we will be installing the Go programming language. For that, the first step is downloading the Go programming language binary. You can get this URL from the Go programming languages website and documentation. So we are using wget space the download URL to download this particular artifact. Now this is a tar.gz file, so you can now use this particular command to extract this compressed file in a particular location we want, which is /user/local/go. So we are using sudo tar -C, then the location where we want to extract is user local and -xzvf and the file name. So if you press enter, you will see a long list of output of the files which are getting extracted. So after you have extracted it, next what you need to do is you need to actually export the path. So we are doing export path equal to $path hyphen the path to the Go version. Okay, so here after this path is exported, you can see that the Go version is being displayed if you hit the command. What you can do is you can also enter this path in this particular file /etc/bash.bashrc. Okay, so in this bashrc file, you can export the path in this way, export path equal to $path, the same command that we used, and save this file. So after you have installed git, curl and go, the next steps would be installing Docker and then installing Docker Compose. So installing Docker has multiple steps. So based on the platform and the operating system you are using in your own laptop or PC, these steps will vary. So these are very specific to the Ubuntu Linux operating system. So here the steps are first adding a repository, the keys, and then finally doing sudo apt update and sudo apt install docker ce, docker ce cli and containerd.io. So these three tools or these three programs have to be installed, and after you have installed them, there are some post installation steps which are required for so that you can use Docker properly. If you do not follow these post installation steps of sudo group add docker and also this sudo user mod -a capital G docker space $user, then you won't be able to use Docker without the sudo or root level permissions. But for using Hyperledger Fabric, it is necessary that you install Docker and then apply these two post installation steps of adding this group called Docker and adding your own user to this Docker group. So if you want to install Docker for other platforms, you have to go to this particular link and you will find the installation instructions for Windows and Mac OS there. So let us see how we can install Docker. So first, Docker has some prerequisites that you need to install. So we will be installing them: sudo apt install, then CA certificates, and also GNU PG to manage the keys, because we will be adding a key to install Docker, and LSB release. So it may be possible that these are already installed, as the case here. So then we will be using this particular command and it will add the key, GNU PG key, which is required for adding the Docker repository. After this, what you need to do is you need to execute this particular command and it will add the Docker repository to your sources list. Then just do sudo apt update and wait till the apt package manager is updating its sources lists. Fine. So after sudo apt update is complete, then what you can do is actually go ahead and install all the three programs which are required to install Docker completely: docker ce, docker ce cli and containerd.io. So after this, these are the post installation steps. You need to actually follow them. Here it says that group Docker already exists. That is only because I had already installed it once. So you have to do sudo group add docker and sudo user mod -ag docker space $user. So after this, if you press Docker and hit enter, you will see the following output, and Docker version will be showing you two different version number. One is for the client, Docker engine community client, and this particular one is for the server. This is the Docker server version number. So after you have installed Docker, the next step would be to install Docker Compose. So this is the final prerequisite for installing Hyperledger Fabric. So Docker Compose is also a tool which helps you to manage Docker containers, and Fabric uses this particular tool Docker Compose to manage the different components in a particular Fabric network. So using specific Docker Compose files, Fabric will be bringing up a test network or whatever network you want, and create the required containers for that network. So to install Docker Compose, you need to execute these particular commands. So similar to Docker, if you want to install it for other platforms instead of Ubuntu like Windows or Mac OS, you can go to the following documentation link and then find out how you can install that. So once you install these prerequisites, you have to also confirm and match the version numbers which are mentioned in the Fabric documentation. Okay, so let us go ahead and install Docker Compose and see. So this particular command will be downloading and then installing the Docker Compose program. As you can see, it is downloading some files. It will take some time depending on your internet connectivity speed. So once it is installed, if you need to execute this command sudo chmod +x then path to the Docker Compose to make it executable. So after this, you can simply write docker space compose and then also check the version space version. You can see that it is showing version 2.0.0. Once you have all the prerequisites installed, ensure that the version numbers are compatible with what is mentioned in the Fabric's documentation. So you can go to this link and check what version of each tool you need to install Fabric. So finally, once all these prerequisites have been installed, you need to go ahead and install the Fabric tool. Now installing Fabric is not like installing just one specific program. Instead, Fabric is a collection of different libraries, SDKs, tools, images, etc. So we will be installing the Fabric samples. So Fabric project comes with some sample programs and scripts which will help you to bring up test networks or Fabric networks, and also help you in writing smart contracts and applications. Then we will be installing Fabric binaries. So Fabric binaries are specifically some executables, some programs which are provided by Hyperledger Fabric for generating the keys for different participants, also generating the genesis block which will be used to initiate the blockchain ledger, and various other things such as a PR tool to execute and query transactions easily, and other tools for monitoring the network. So apart from that, the final thing which we will need to install are the Docker images for Hyperledger Fabric. So these Docker images are actually very important. So Hyperledger Fabric has various components which we will go through in detail in the following lectures, but all these components come containerized. So suppose there are two organizations, then the different components of organization 1 and organization 2 will be containerized and thus isolated from each other. So and also these Docker images are much easy to learn to run and deploy while creating a Fabric network. So in order to install Hyperledger Fabric, we need to first determine a location in our system where we want to place these samples, binaries, and also images. And so for that, you can create your own directory, whatever directory you want, navigate to that, and then execute the following command, which is curl hyphen small s capital S and capital L space this particular URL, and then a pipe and bash hyphen s, and then you will be passing the Fabric version number that you want to install and the Fabric CA version number. So, these are two slightly different components, both are Fabric components. The Fabric version number is the version number for Fabric PRs, orderers, etc. and CA is a different Fabric component, which is the Fabric certificate authority. So, it has a different range of version numbers. So, if you go to the documentation page of Hyperledger Fabric installation steps, then you will see that it will show you the latest version numbers and give you the entire command like this. Here we will be installing 2.2.4 and 1.5.2, or this can vary. So, you can change this and install any Hyperledger Fabric release you want. So, after you run this command, what this command will do is it will clone the Fabric samples project, download the Fabric binaries, and then also pull the Docker images. Okay, so, all these three installation steps are combined in this single command, and after you execute this, what you need to do is you need to export the path or add the path to the path variable where your Fabric binaries are located. So, suppose your Fabric binaries are located in /home /username /Fabric binaries, then you have to add that path to the path variable. So, we will go through it step by step and you can see how it works. So, we will be using a specific directory. So, let us go ahead and create a particular directory where we will be using Hyperledger Fabric. So, mkdir space Fabric. So, this will create a directory named Fabric. Let us cd into it. Now, we are in this particular directory called Fabric. So, we will paste the command that I just showed you, and we will be installing 2.2.2 and 1.4.9. You can change the version number as per your liking. So, when you are installing it, you can use the latest version number that you have. So, as you can see, it is cloning the Fabric samples repository and checking out the proper version number tag. After that, it is also pulling the Hyperledger Fabric binaries. So, it is downloading the binaries and then it will extract them to a particular location. It will take some time depending on the speed of your internet connectivity. So, after the binaries are installed, then you can see that it is pulling Hyperledger Fabric Docker images. So, it will pull a lot of Fabric images. So, in this case, many of those images are already pulled. So, these are getting done very quickly, but it might take some amount of time to complete these steps. So, it will be downloading the images from the Docker repositories and then installing these Docker images in your own system. So, if you get an output like this, which is just showing you the different images that have been installed, then you know that Fabric is installed. So, if you do ls, you can see there is one directory which is created, Fabric samples. Inside it, we have all these different directories and files. So, including a directory called bin. So, bin has all these binaries, and this particular path, the bin folders path, you can copy, and what you can do is you can export this and add it to the path variable like this. So, after exporting this path, what you can also do is you can add it to your bash rc file, so that you do not need to change it, I mean export this again and again. So, we will be doing nano and then the home directory /.bash rc, or you can also change it in /etc/bash rc or bash.bash rc, and the same line we are pasting here, export path equal to $path and then colon path to the Fabric binaries directory. So after this you can actually check the fabric binaries if they are working or not. So cryptogen is one fabric binary, similarly config txgen is another one. Yes, all of these are working, and similarly PR is another fabric binary. So you can see PR space version to check that indeed the correct fabric version have been installed. So at this point we have installed the prerequisites for installing Hyperledger fabric, and then also we have installed the Docker images, the binaries and the fabric samples, which are enough for getting started with Hyperledger fabric. So concluding, we learned about fabric foundation or Hyperledger foundation in general, and then we also saw how we can use Hyperledger fabric, install the prerequisites and check if the fabric binaries are working or not. And in the following lectures we will see that how we can use the Hyperledger fabric platform to bring up a test network, and then we can install some chain codes which are the fabric specific term for smart contracts, and also execute those chain codes, evaluate these different transactions, query the different transactions, monitor the fabric networks, etc. So we will continue from the next lecture. Thank you.